to Same Brain. As you can tell, I'm completely on my own today. I don't have my little sidekick with me. So I just wanted to start with a little bit of an apology about the last video. Obviously, it was my first case, and we hadn't really used the software or the mics yet, so the software let me down. So the audio in that video isn't the greatest, but hopefully that didn't deter you from being able to watch the video. If you haven't seen that video, it will be up here. I'll put a little link for you up here. It was the Odessa Catacombs case, and it was part 1 of 2, and it featured Johnny Norton from Hell on Earth. So before we start, I just want to make a quick disclaimer that all the research that I have done is my own. I've used documentaries, online pages, web pages, Wikipedia, and in no way, shape or form is any of this to disrespect Milly Dowler's family. So that being said, let's jump straight in. On the 25th of June 1988, Sally and Bob Dowler gave birth to their second baby girl. They named her Amanda Dowler, and she would later go on to be known as Milly by her friends and her family. Growing up, Milly lived with her sister, who was a little bit older than her, maybe 2 or 3 years, called Gemma, and her mother and her father, Sally and Bob. Milly and her sister Gemma were very close. Gemma recalls sharing a bedroom with Milly growing up, and she shared stories about how they would sneak downstairs and take food, and they would stay up all night exchanging stories about boys and gossiping and just usual sisterly loving behaviour towards one another. Milly was described as a lovely girl with an infectious heart. Everyone wanted to be around her. If you knew Milly, you probably loved her. She was just that sort of person that walked into a room and you could feel her presence because she was light-hearted, she was friendly and bubbly and really approachable. However, on the 21st of March 2002, the Dowler family's lives were about to be turned upside down. Milly had failed to return home from school. Her sister Gemma had come home and alerted her father, Bob, that Milly wasn't home yet. So Gemma was calling around the house. She's nowhere to be seen. In an interview, Gemma did state that she knew something was wrong. She had this sisterly instinct that told her something was horribly wrong and that she may never see Milly ever again. When 2 hours had passed, Bob decided enough was enough and it was time to call the police. So Bob called the police. The whole time that he's called the police, he's ringing Milly's phone off the hook. There's no answer. First port of call for the police was to talk to Milly's friends, the last people that had seen her at school. CCTV footage shows Milly coming down the stairs of school and leaving school at 7 minutes past 3. It was from here she went with her friend Danielle to the train station, and they had planned to have the train journey together home, and then Danielle would get off at her stop and Milly would get off at hers. CCTV footage from the train station at 3:24 shows Danielle and Milly entering the train station. It was somewhere during this train journey that they decided they would go to a cafe, which was located on Danielle's stop, which was the stop before Milly was originally going to get off. So the two girls decided that they would definitely get off together. They would go to the cafe, they would have some well catching up to do, they would gossip about boys, have some cake, and then Milly would walk home. At 3:47 p.m, Milly used one of her friend's mobiles, which happened to be a boy, to text Bob, her father, to let him know that she would be home within 30 minutes and she was just leaving the cafe. At 4:05, Danielle's sister had arrived to take Danielle home. It was agreed that Danielle would go home with her sister and Milly would walk home, which was only maybe a 25-minute walk from the train station, and she would go home from there. In an interview, Danielle recalls asking Milly if she'd be okay walking home on her own. She said that she felt a bit silly at this point even asking the question because they lived in a really nice area, one that nothing ever happened in. They both kind of laughed and said, "Be absolutely fine. I'll talk to you later." At 4:08, so only a couple of minutes later, one of Gemma's friends, who's Milly's older sister, recalls seeing Milly walking on the opposite side of the road. Gemma's friend was waiting for her bus, and within about 30 seconds the bus had arrived and Gemma's friend got on to the bus. Now once Gemma's friend seated on the bus, she remembers looking around trying to find out where Millie was, but she couldn't see her. It was almost like she'd vanished. Unfortunately, this was the last time anybody had seen Millie Dowler alive. When 24 hours had passed and no one had heard or seen Millie, the police decided they would put a full investigation and an appeal for any witnesses who may have seen her. They had 100 police officers already working on the case. The same police officers and investigation team that worked on the Sarah Payne case, which is a case that I'm going to be featuring on my channel in a couple of weeks. A week later, Millie's parents would both be featured on a UK TV show called Crime Stoppers, and on here they made a witness appeal and appealed directly to Millie, asking her to come home. At this point, they thought she might have run away. During this appeal, Millie's favourite pop star, Will Young, actually made an appeal directly to Millie as well, asking her to come home safely to her family. Millie had seen Will Young only a week earlier in concert, and it was her favourite artist at the time. Police investigators then started to look into the CCTV footage, which would have been the next road along from where the bus station was, which was where Gemma's friend had last seen Millie. On that day, unfortunately, it had been raining, so there was some water residue on the lens of the camera. And at the time, between the timestamps that they were looking for Millie, the sun was out. So between the sun hitting the water on the lens, it was nearly impossible to get any information from the footage. 6 months later, on September 18th, 2002, a body was discovered. The body was discovered in a woodland area in a town called Yateley, which is in Hampshire in the UK. Unfortunately, by the time the police had got to the body, it had been there several months, so they had to use dental records to identify the victim. The dental records were a match for Millie, and the missing person investigation had now turned into a murder investigation. Pollen experts were brought in, and they were able to determine that Millie's body had been there for 6 months. So her body had been placed there within the week that she had gone missing. So this whole time that the investigation had been open, Millie had been dead, and her body had been lying in the woodlands. Up until November 2004, the case had no leads. When police in London contacted the Hampshire police to let them know that they had had some similar cases coming and that they thought they should look into them for the Millie Dowler case. This man was known to the police as Levi Belfield, a 35-year-old man from London, born and bred in southwest London. Levi had 5 children, some of which were living with him at the time. In an interview from one of his ex-girlfriends, Joanna said that he could be really temperamental with his manners. One minute he'd be loving and caring and supportive, the next he'd be biting, kicking and trying to push her down the stairs. He really was the type of person that you didn't know where you stood with him. Every time Joanna tried to leave him, he would physically and mentally abuse her to the point where she didn't have the confidence to leave him. So now Levi was under investigation for 2 other murders and 30 assault cases. One of the murders was for Amélie Delagrange, who was a French student who was visiting the UK at the time. She was on her way home one evening and unfortunately missed her stop. She didn't realise until a couple of stops after, so when she eventually got off the bus, she needed to make a walk through some woodlands, but she figured it would be absolutely fine. She was unfortunate enough to come face to face in these woodlands with Levi, who hit her over the head with a blunt weapon and then left her for dead. Amélie was found alive, but unfortunately she passed away in hospital upon arrival. July 6, 2005, Levi was finally questioned in the murder investigation for Millie Dowler. When watching the interview tape, the whole time he was there, the only thing he said was, "No comment, no comment, no comment." Until the last 10 minutes of the interview, when he started to get really hot, really fidgety, takes off his jumper, and you can just tell by his manners that he felt really uncomfortable with the situation. One of the investigators did go on to say that it was this moment that they knew that he had killed Millie, just from how he was reacting to the questions. He didn't once deny what he had done. With no evidence, and Levi just saying no comments, they went on to question Emma Mills. Emma Mills was the partner of Levi at the time of Millie's disappearance. At the time of Millie's disappearance, Emma and Levi lived in a flat which was located just 100 metres away from where they found Millie's body. However, on the evening of Millie's disappearance, Emma and Levi weren't staying at the flat. They were house sitting for a friend. In an interview, Emma couldn't account for where Levi had been for most of the evening. She recalls him coming back at 11 p.m, but said it was strange because he had changed his outfit from the morning. At 4 a.m. the following morning, Levi woke up and said that he was going back to the flat. He was taking the dog and he was going to have a lie-in. That same day, Levi told Emma that they were moving. They were leaving the flat, he had packed it up, and he was taking Emma and the children, his children that they lived with, to a house. Now, this was completely out of the blue. They hadn't discussed this whatsoever. Emma said after visiting the house that Levi had suggested that they live in, she really wasn't keen. The kitchen was in complete distress. There was no cupboard doors on the kitchen worktops. The floorboards weren't even down properly. And she recalls having to sleep on sofa cushions with the children. After moving in, Emma grew more and more suspicious that maybe Levi was cheating on her. She remembers items of clothing being missing, and duvets from their bed that they shared at the flat, they were missing. When she confronted Levi about this, he said the dog had messed on them, and that the simple solution was to throw them away. Emma, growing more and more upset with the fact that he's probably cheating on her, over and over again asked him, "What were you doing on the 21st? Where were you? Why did you change your clothes?" To which he answered, "You think I did, Millie?" Emma Mills describes her response to what he had said as sickening. She didn't understand why he would possibly joke about this, or even bring it up. It was at this point that police tried to dig some more into Levi's past. They realised that the best answer was probably to go back through his girlfriends. So they went back to question Joanna, which was the lady that previously had stated about his very unstable emotional connection to people and how he would physically beat her. Joanna confirmed that on several occasions she and Levi had gone horse riding in that exact woods where they had found Millie's remains. When police asked Joanna to take them to the site where she used to go walking with Levi, she took him to the exact spot where Millie's remains had been found. One day before the disappearance of Millie, a young girl by the name of Rachel Carrolls was approached in a car by a man who asked her if she'd like a ride home. He said that he'd recently moved into the area and that they were neighbours and that he would take her home. Now, Rachel said she knew all her neighbours very well and that she would have known if someone had moved out and if someone had moved in. So she declined. When Rachel got home, her parents rightly rang the police and described a man with a full face around 35 years old driving a red hatchback vehicle with 2 children's seats in the back. When Emma Mills, Levi's ex-girlfriend, was questioned on the car that they had at the time of Millie's disappearance, she confirmed that it was a red hatchback. So this puts Levi in the area the day before, scouting out young girls to get into his car. May 2006, Levi was convicted of 2 murders, but unfortunately they weren't Millie's murders. February 2008, Levi was sent to jail for 2 lifetime sentences for the murder of the 2 girls. However, they had no evidence to link him to the Millie Dowler case. Police decided it would be best to go back and look at the CCTV footage from the bus stop and the next known CCTV camera that would have located Millie if she was walking home. As there was no footage of Millie arriving at Station Avenue, they knew that between Station Avenue and the bus stop, Millie had to have been taken. Now, the road between Station Avenue and the bus stop was called Collingwood Avenue. And who lived on Collingwood Avenue? None other than Levi. It was here that Levi snatched Millie from the pavement and took her back to the flat that he shared with Emma. 25 minutes later, Levi's car was seen leaving the flat and turning onto Station Avenue. 5 a.m. the following morning, a witness who was out looking for Millie actually remembers seeing Levi's car coming back into Collingwood Avenue. It was here that Levi, in the mist of the morning, in the darkness, moved Millie's body from the flat into his car. From here, he would drive to Yateley Forest and he would dispose of Millie's body. The 31st of March 2010, Levi was convicted of the murder of Millie Dowler. And in May 2011, the case was brought to a jury. Levi's defence team had found diary entries from Millie. They went on to use these in the case to say that maybe Millie had run away to commit suicide, as in these notes she had expressed that she didn't feel like anyone loved her and that she had self-loathe. But the evidence was stacked against him, so in July 2011 he was convicted and sentenced for the murder of Millie Dowler. He was given another life sentence on top of the 3 that he was already serving for the murders and the attempted murder of the 3 previous girls. It was also in this year that a newspaper from the UK was completely under fire because of this case. During the time that Millie's body hadn't been discovered and so she was still presumed missing, Millie's parents would leave her voicemails nearly every single day, up until the point where the mailbox was completely full. Millie's parents, they didn't send any more messages after that, until about a month later when they tried again, and they could leave a voicemail. So this in their minds showed that she was still alive and that she was listening to these voicemails and deleting them, meaning there was more space on there for them to leave more messages. It would come out in court that the News of the World had actually hacked Millie's voicemails and they had been deleting them so that Millie's parents could leave more, meaning that they could get more gossip, more disgusting material to put into their newspaper. Millie's family was rewarded £2 million, but if you ask me, that's not enough. Nothing would ever be enough. They spent weeks and weeks, months on end, thinking that Millie may be alive, up until when they found her body. It was a completely inhumane thing to do and absolutely disgusting. Several years later, on the 27th of January 2016, Levi did actually confess to murdering Millie, but he did later go on to deny that he'd ever said it. So unfortunately, we'll never know if he did murder Millie Dowler. I personally think there's too much evidence stacked against him to say that he didn't do it. I really do believe that he did. So that is the heartbreaking case of Millie Dowler. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this case. I'd love to know what you think of it and if you think he's guilty. If you liked the video, please subscribe to my channel. It would mean so much to me. And if you have any suggestions for any future cases, I'd love to know them. So if you leave me a comment in the comments down below, I will definitely look into them. Until next time, stay safe and stay morbid. Thanks, guys.